We're finally getting to our ACC preview. It's been a long time coming. Unfortunately, it took a lot longer to get out than I thought. I lost my notes, so I had to rewatch film, make sure I was talking about the right topics here. Still can't say it'll be perfect. I had to rush it due to the season starting this Saturday, which, if you're like me, I know you're excited about it because I can't wait to see this season kick off. We don't really have a great slate of games to kick it off, but I'll take Iowa State, Kansas State, and hope that that turns into a great matchup. And I'm just excited to have college football back. But it's our job here today to go through the ACC. We're going to talk about each team and the NFL draft prospects because this channel is about the NFL draft mostly. We cover college, we cover the NFL mainly because I'm just a big old nerdy football fan. I love it. So I spend my time watching film. I watch a lot of games. And you know what? When in my free time, it's just what I like to do. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the ACC preview. First thing I want to say, these are all going to be in alphabetical order. I'm going to hopefully timestamp it down below if I remember to do it. And I have all the times right. I'll timestamp it for you. But if not, just click through its alphabetical order. It'll give you an idea. I'd prefer if you watch the whole video, but if you just want to see your team, go ahead and click through it. We're going to kick it off with the Boston College Eagles. Their starting quarterback's expected to be Grayson James. They also have Dylan Longerin from Alabama, a transfer competing for the job. He's a freshman or sophomore now, and we'll have to see who ends up winning the job, but I do expect it to be Grayson James to start the year. At receiver, they got Lewis Bond, Reed Harris, and Jaden Skeet. Honestly, don't know a whole lot about these guys. Watched a little bit of film. I don't think they're super dynamic. I don't expect Boston College to be a great team. I am initially from Massachusetts. That's why you see the Patriots stuff here in the background. And I am a Gators fan because of where I live in Florida now. Ultimately, I became a Gators fan as well. But I'm a Boston College fan just because I grew up in New England. I'm a Patriots fan, Red Sox fan, all that. And Boston College is just part of it. They were just never good at football, mainly a hockey school. So I'd like to see him get it turned around with Billy O'Brien, but I'm just not sure this is going to be their year. Looking at the running back, they got Turbo Richard and Jordan McDonald listed as the expected starters when I looked at our lads, which is probably your best bet if you're looking to see depth charts. They're not always perfect. You have to pay attention. Sometimes they'll still have the occasional transfer listed. So you do have to really do your background research to make sure you're talking about the right players. And there's still a chance maybe with the portal I missed something. Or with injuries, I missed something. Tight end Jeremiah Franklin's another guy you should know about. He's expected to be their starting tight end. Across the offensive line, they got three guys who are expected to be drafted, or who are draft eligible, I should say, and Logan Taylor, Dwayne Alec, and Tommy Matheson. We'll have to see how it all goes for him this year. I do think at tackle, they have a guy who could potentially be draftable. We'll just have to see how it all plays out for him. Flipping it over to their defense, David Crouch at linebacker and Amari Jackson were what I think are probably the top two returning players for this team. They do have a bunch of other guys on here. They have a pretty cool story in Bryce Steele at linebacker if he can get himself healthy. He had cancer. He fought his way back. And I'd love to see the kid succeed as a senior. It'd be really cool, and it'd be a great story, kind of reminiscent of Mark Herzlich back in the day. So we'll have to see how that all works out. But I don't expect this team to be very good. They're over under for the season's 5.5 victories. And I've got to be honest with you, looking at their schedule, I'm not 100% sure they're going to get there. I'm going to go ahead and give them a final record of 4-8. I don't want to hate on the Eagles. Like I said, I want to see them do better. And I think Billy O'Brien's a good college coach. Didn't really work out in the NFL the way you'd hope, but I think he could maybe get this team to punch above its pay grade. I just don't feel fully confident in where they're at this year, so I'm going to have to hit the under on them and just be a little lower. And honestly, I do hope I'm wrong in this situation. Next up's the Cal Golden Bears, and right here's the first one that changed. And I'm re-recording this after because they just announced that Jaron, I don't know how to say his name exactly, ended up being the starting quarterback. He's a true freshman out of Hawaii. It's Jaron Crew Sagaputile or something like that. And I don't know, but he is actually going to be the starter over Devin Brown. So I do have to update the graphic and try to get that into the video. If it's not, I apologize. It's going to show Devin Brown. I just got to make sure I can edit it in. We'll see if I'm able to make that work after. I'm still learning a lot of these things, but I do think they have a ton of transfers. I don't know exactly how good this team's going to be, though. I think starting the freshman is actually probably a good idea. Get him developing it, get him playing, and kind of take your lumps this year. They have a bunch of guys who transferred in. They had guys leave on them. I don't really know what to expect of this team. At receiver, they do have Trent Grizzle, Jacob DeJesus from UNLV, and Mark Hamper from Wisconsin. At running back, they're expected to start Brandon Hyde Jr. from UTSA or Kendrick Raphael from NC State. And at tight end, it's expected to be Landon Morris from Temple. Across the offensive line, they're relatively young. Their defense does not have a ton of guys that are even draft eligible. And I just think that kind of plays into the whole situation here for Cal. On the interior, they have Aiden Kina, I think's how you say that name, maybe. He's somebody that's a returning player that did have a bit of an impact for him last year. And they have Brent Austin at corner, a USF transfer that I think could be a good player for him. He has bounced around a little bit. We'll have to see whether he's able to put it all together. And then they're relying on some other guys stepping up in competition level as well. Their over unders 5.5. I think you're going to find that a lot here in the ACC. I do think they have some winnable games on this schedule. I'm just not sure exactly how they're going to do here in the ACC slate. I'm not real confident with this team, and I watch film of every Power 5 team. I want to say that here if you're questioning my thoughts or how I make predictions. I also go ahead and try to do as much research as possible in the background just to see what's being said at practices, try to get into all the different message boards and try to find these insiders for each school that can give you some real nuggets of information. That's kind of how I go about this because I'm not a beat writer. I'm not tied to any conference or affiliated with anybody. I do this all on my own. So I do rely upon that for information, which is why things are sometimes hard with all these transfers. And that's where Cal could go up or down. I'm going to go ahead and hit the under though. Say they finish 5-7 this year. I think they're starting a freshman quarterback. I do think it's the right decision. I think that's why he didn't stay at Oregon when he flipped and committed there. I think he actually wants to get on the field. So hopefully it works out for him here. Moving on to probably the best team in the conference. I'm just going to be upfront about that. The Clemson Tigers are going to be great. I don't care what anybody says. I would be shocked if they're a bad team this year. Cade Klubnik at quarterback. He actually improved as the season went along last year, and he looked really good in the playoff loss. I got to give him a lot of credit. The way he looked against Georgia at the beginning of the year, just not as high on him. I still personally do not have a first round grade on him. I have him more in the range of Shadur Sanders. Last year, I think different problems, but he does actually surprisingly have some of the same problems. I think his deep ball can be very up and down. I think he just unfortunately doesn't have the strongest arm and have the best tools. I do think it's probably a little better than Shadur's, but I think he shows good zip on underneath throws and he's pretty accurate underneath. The problem is, I think his decision making and his reading can get a little slow at times and stagnate. And when he tries to handle the pocket, he doesn't always step up into it. He'll try to get out the back and go out the side, and that'll work sometimes in college. Not going to work in the NFL. I have him as a mid-second round grade personally. And he has a lot to prove this year. And I think he does have some tools where he could make it work without having the best arm. He is, like I said, pretty accurate. He had a real nice deep corner route to, I can't remember who it was, in his first game that I watched, which was against, I think, Georgia was the first one I watched. And he had a beautiful throw there that I was like, all right, this kid might have a great arm. Like way more of an arm than I thought. I shouldn't say great, but way more of an arm than I thought. He layered it in there perfectly, timed it upright. But I do think ultimately that was kind of best case scenario, and that's how his deep ball is going to have to work. So we'll see if he's able to continue that. They have a trifecta at receiver that isn't going to be hard to compete with across the entire nation here. It's probably one of the best receiving cores out there. TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco Jr., and Antonio Williams are fantastic. I did see they're expected to start a running back in Gideon Davidson, who is a freshman. I'll be curious if they actually end up doing that. They had Jay Haynes listed as well. At tight end, they had a guy who's learning, didn't really have a whole lot of stats. I don't know exactly what to say about him other than that. And then their offensive line has some guys who could be pretty interesting. I know Blake Miller's somebody that draft nicks like myself are kind of looking to see if he can take a step forward. I do see strength as being an issue in his game. I think he's a little weak and gets punched and knocked back more than he should. Walter Parks is somebody who I think could be a good interior prospect. Tristan Leigh, I've heard, has a little bit more buzz than I expected. I didn't actually pay attention to him when I watched film, so I do have to go back and really evaluate him specifically. But let's go ahead and flip it over to their defense, where they got Peter Woods, man. He's probably the best defensive player on this team. He's arguably possibly one of the best ones in the entire draft next year. I have a pretty high early grade on him, but this time of the year, it's easy to have an early grade that's high, but I think he could be an excellent prospect. TJ Parker, he has some ups and downs he needs to work on, but I do think right now he would be a first-round draft pick if you had to guess today. I have a first-round grade, borderline first, second-round grade, but that puts you more in the middle of the first round right now. I think Wade Woodaz at linebacker could be really good. I think DeMonte Capehart on the interior of the defensive line is somebody that's had a lot of potential that people were excited about. I just don't think he's really taken that step forward. We'll have to see if he can actually do it. And I seen they had an edge who was a transfer starting for him in Will Height from Purdue. That's pretty impressive. You don't see that very often here at Clemson. So I'll be excited to see if he can actually make an impact on this team. Of course, they have Avion Terrell at corner, the brother of AJ Terrell, the Falcons corner. He's a little bit smaller, and I'm not real sure how his size is going to translate to the NFL. I do think it'll drop him down boards ultimately. He is a good prospect from what I watched. He is somebody I haven't finished his summer grade on as we're heading into the season. Unfortunately, I was hoping to do position rankings in the summer this year, just never got to it. Trying to get college football content back on channel for the video game purposes, and that led me astray from really working on summer scouting and scouting prospects and put me behind a little bit. Got to be honest, I don't think it was worth it. It hasn't done great on channel, so we're probably done with the video games at this moment because I just think it's hurt the channel. And if by chance you want to see them, I have a second channel, same name, it's just Jeff Dixon Gaming. So you can go there and find it there. But they have an over-under of 10.5 this season, and this is a really tough one for me. I'm not going to lie to you. I think they have some tricky games on their schedule. LSU with Garrett Nussmeier. I really think SMU is a tricky team, but I do expect them to maybe take a bit of a step back. North Carolina, you don't know what to expect with Bill Belichick at head coach. Florida State maybe could take a step forward more than I expect. I don't think so. I'm also a Gator fan, so maybe I'm a little biased there. Good news is they miss Miami, which is going to help their schedule. But then they also have Louisville, who I think could be a good team as well. So they have a pretty tough schedule. And I almost went under and hit 10-2. But I got to be honest with you, I'm just going to trust the talent of this team and say I think they're just good enough overall where they're going to win a lot of games and they're going to go 11-1 this year in the regular season. I fully expect to see Clemson back in the playoffs this year. And if they don't, they should be really disappointed because they have a lot of talent that they're going to lose after this season. And they're going to wish they didn't miss the opportunity. So that'll move us on to the Duke Blue Devils. They have Darian Mensah coming in to play quarterback from Tulane. He had a pretty good year at Tulane. He's a young player still developing. He was the number one prospect in the portal for a little while there, and people were kind of shocked he went to Duke. So he's somebody that maybe you should get excited about. He has pretty good size. 6'3", 205. Like I said, 2 years eligibility. We'll have to see how that goes. They have a ton of transfers across their offense. They just don't have a lot of guys that I'm super excited about. Andrew Anthony from Oklahoma, Cooper Barkate from Harvard, and Keyshawn Brown at receiver. Running back, Jacques Moore. Tight end, Landon King, who's a Utah transfer. At tackle, they got Bruno Fino, who I do believe is a decent prospect. Not a high end, but maybe one of their better ones. And then Justin Pickett across the interior. Looking at their defense, though, they have a lot of guys who are draft eligible, and they played really well for Manny Diaz. I don't know how many of them are going to be high-end picks. Like, I think Chandler Rivers could be really good at corner. It's more of a nickelback, though, with his size. And I expect that to be more of like a third-round value at best. Most nickelbacks don't go super high unless they're special. And I don't think he's quite that special, personally. So I'd expect the NFL to ultimately end up probably taking him in the third round. Other than that, they have some guys. Terry Moore had some decent stats I seen. Vincent Anthony Jr. popped a little bit when I was watching. Not to say he's a high-end prospect, but he kind of surprised me, which is why I put him here in the graphic. So got to give him a little credit. They got some transfers, a guy from Utah State, a guy from Dartmouth. You're going to have to see if they're able to step up here into the ACC. I'll definitely be curious how it works out. They're over under 6.5 this season, though. And they have some winnable games on here. They have some bad teams on their schedule that I think will help them out. I'm ultimately going to be aggressive with Duke, and I'm going to go ahead and have them hit the over. I think Manny Diaz is a good coach. I think, unfortunately, his time at Miami just didn't work out, and I do think Miami's a different program than Duke. Miami expects championships. Duke will be happy with what he did at Miami, which is be a good coach, get 7-8 wins a year, maybe be able to pop over that. And I think that he's going to have a good team and have a spunky team in the ACC in the future. I just really think he's a good fit there. Let's go ahead and flip it over to the Florida State Seminoles. As a Gator fan, this one's tough for me. I root for Florida State to lose every game. As a fan, that's just what you do. But you do have to be unbiased in this as much as you can be and pull yourself back. So I'm going to do my best. Florida State fans, roast me in the comments if you want. I know I'm a Gator fan. You're going to hate me regardless for that. But let's talk about him. I think Tommy Castellanos at quarterback, interesting. Not the guy he's talking himself up to be, though. If he was, he'd still be at Boston College starting for Billy O'Brien instead of getting benched, pouting, and leaving. So I kind of think he's a false prophet. He was okay there. He had a lot of issues. He just doesn't play within structure of offenses very well, and I think that's ultimately going to hurt you guys. Now, you guys have some talent you got in the transfer portal. You deserve a ton of credit for that. Deuce Robinson from USC. You got Gavin Blackwell from UNC. Not as excited about him, but Squirrel White at Tennessee is a good player, man. I've seen him play actually live, and he has some juice. So I get being excited about him. Running back Roydell Williams, Alabama transfer. I think he could be a good back for you. And across their offensive line, they got a ton of transfers in. We'll have to see how it all works out. They still got Richie Leonard IV, who transferred in from Florida. We'll see how it all works out for you guys. The transfers, though, across the offensive line have played, which is a good thing. Having starts across your offensive line does help. And I think that makes a team's floor a little bit higher. So overall, I think they had a lot of good gets there. Now, looking at their defense, they have some guys to be excited about. Darrell Jackson Jr., Darrell Jackson Jr., defensive tackle. He plays on the interior. He's a real NFL prospect. I think he could be a day two guy, probably, if all goes well. I really liked him, so we'll have to see how his season goes. But he popped honestly more than Josh Farmer did last year on tape, and people were really hyping Farmer, and I was just like, I don't know, dude. He doesn't look like the best guy on this line. So I mean, that says something right there. They brought in Elijah Herring from Memphis. I actually think he's a good linebacker. Probably not much of an NFL prospect, but I think he's a good college linebacker. They also got some transfers from Nebraska, Houston, Western Kentucky, Nebraska, another one from Nebraska. We'll have to see how it all comes together. They're just betting on a bunch of transfers coming in, raising the talent level of this team and meshing better than they did last year. It worked the previous season. It just didn't work last year, and I'm afraid you're on the same path. I don't think you'll be 2-10. That was abnormally bad. The good news is Tommy Castellanos has worked with your offensive coordinator, so that kind of should make you feel a little better than DJU did last year. Florida State's over under 7.5 here for their victories. They have 6 games that I think are winnable, and I almost went 8-4 on the season. I just think that's too aggressive. I know Tommy Castellanos has played for your offensive coordinator and Gus Malzahn at UCF, but it didn't work out there underneath him the first time. That's why he left. I'm not going to be that aggressive with Florida State. I'm going to take a risk, trust my gut that I just don't know that this team's going to mesh, and I don't think the talent level's 8-4. I'm going to go 7-5, and I could easily be wrong here. I'm a bit of a Gator homer probably in this pick. I'm not going to lie to you. It is what it is. I can't help it. Not many Florida State fans are going to pick the Gators to actually do good either. You're going to naturally, I think, see the flaws in your rivals a little more than you probably should. But I'm going to go 7-5. I'm willing to be wrong on this one. I hope I'm not, at least when it comes to the Gator prediction, because nothing better than the Gators beating the Seminoles. But, it is what it is. Let's go ahead and move on to our next team, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Quarterback Haynes King was really good for him last year when he was healthy. And I do think that if he stays healthy, Georgia Tech's going to be a good team. They're going to be a tough team in this conference. They could even be a surprise team. I think Eric Rivers, the FIU transfer, is bound to break out, kind of filling in exactly the role Eric Singleton had for this team before he transferred away. So I think he could be a great get. They got a transfer in Will Reed from Princeton to play tackle. They actually have some talent on this team, and I think that overall they're pretty good on offense. Hopefully this season he's just healthy and this offense is able to really go. I think Eric Rivers is the one big guy in this offense that I really like as a prospect. Looking at their defense, I don't see a ton of high-level prospects there. I'm just going to be honest with you. Granted, I will admit it's early in the process, and there's a lot of people that could break out. I could eat my words by the end of the season. I could eat my words 3 weeks into the season and see a guy who's breaking out and really like his film. But for now, I'm just going to be honest. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about their NFL talent, but I think for college, this is a good defense. They have a chance to be good. They have some transfers coming in who they're going to need to step up. Matthew Alexander from UCF, Ronald Triplett coming over from UTSA, and Jai Gilmore coming over from Georgia State. I think Amari Harvey at corner was pretty good. So was Clayton Powell-Lee at safety. And hopefully these guys are able to keep it rolling because they were a fun watch last season and they were surprisingly good. Vegas has them at 7.5 for their over-under. I'm going to go ahead and have them hit the over. I think they go 8-4 this year. I'm a believer in Georgia Tech. It's all dependent upon Haynes King staying healthy, but I think he's a fun quarterback, probably not the highest level NFL prospect, but for a college quarterback, he's fun and he's going to be able to create plays for these guys. And I think this team's going to be spunky. I think they're going to be a good team. I like them. Now we're going to get to the Louisville Cardinal, a team that I like. I really like their head coach and Jeff Brom. I think quarterback Miller Moss is probably a good fit in his offense, and I do think he'll probably put him in a better position than Lincoln Riley did. USC honestly has been kind of disappointing. So I think him coming over to Louisville will give him a better opportunity to show his skills off. At receiver, Chris Bell could pop. He could be an easy first-round draft pick. He's the one guy that I'm really excited about on this offense right now that has the potential to really stand out in the NFL draft. Dane Brugler just had him, I think, as his number two receiver, which is incredibly high. I did not have him that high when I watched his film. I had him in the first round, but he wasn't wide receiver two for me, or bottom of the first round, I should say. He's raw. He's going to have to develop, but he does pop on film. I'll give him credit for that. Flipping it over to the defense, I did like Stanquan Clark when I watched him on film. I thought he showed some good plays. And other than that, they got a lot of transfers and a lot of veterans out there, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I do think that if these guys can come together, it's all going to work out. If not, they're going to struggle. It's kind of the Florida State conversation we just had. But I think they have more guys returning who will know their roles and they'll be able to keep this team going in the right direction and really incorporate their transfers in. At least that's going to be my prediction. And I think Vegas kind of agrees. They have an over-under of 8.5 for this team. And for me, I think they have a lot of winnable games and they have some toss-ups. I'm going to go 9-3 on the season for Louisville. I think they're a good team. I don't expect them to probably, win the ACC or anything like that. But I think 9-3 is totally doable and they should be happy with that. I'm excited, though, to see how they do. And I think Miller Moss will fit this offense well and probably have a pretty good year for him. Now let's move over to the other team that's tough for me to talk about, and that's the Miami Hurricanes. Carson Beck's coming over from Georgia. He struggled last year. I'm not going to lie to you. He, didn't have a great year for Georgia. He had a lot of turnovers. They got pressure on him and he floundered. Good news is I think Miami has a pretty good offensive line for the ACC. So that's at least good news. Bad news is Carson Beck's coming off of an elbow injury. Don't know how that's going to affect him. He was thought as a potential first round pick. I don't see that in him. I have him graded right now, I think middle of the third round-ish area, middle to late third round. And I don't think he's probably going to have that jump that Cam Ward had, because Cam Ward had a lot of tools that Carson Beck just doesn't. He does not possess. And I don't think that he's going to be able to get to that level. And when I see Canes fans say that, I'm like, guys, you got to be real about it. He just doesn't have the same level of tools. Your best opportunity was last season with Cam Ward, honestly, to have that breakout performance. And in some ways, you got a little robbed by missing the playoffs, but should have just beat Syracuse to end the year and it wouldn't have mattered. And then I wouldn't have to hear him whining about it. But we'll have to see. They got some talent on this offense. CJ Daniels coming over from LSU is a good receiver. Josisha Trader is a good receiver from what I've seen. I don't really know a whole lot about Tony Johnson. Mark Fletcher Jr. is impressive. I think at tackle, Francis Mauigoa is really good, or Mauioa. I don't know exactly how to say that one yet. He's a fantastic right tackle prospect. Arguably, I think I have him listed right now as the number 2 tackle in this class. I'd have to look at my notes. Didn't write that down here for me to glance at. Probably should have, but I think he's the number 2 tackle for me right now. At left tackle, they're expected to start Markel Bell, according to our lads. We'll see. They also have a young guy, 5-star. I forgot to write his name down again. I'm looking. He's been a little disappointing, but I heard he had a good camp, and there's a chance he might be able to sneak his way into the lineup. Darn, man, I can't remember his name, but he was a former 5-star. Really high tackle prospect that I guess it seems like the lights kind of come on from what I've seen from Miami insiders. So good news for them, bad news for me as a Gators fan. But I think they have a good offensive line. I think that's bears well for Carson Beck, because when things are clean, he does play well and he does have some good receiver targets. So you can hope for that, but he's just not going to be creative like Cam Ward. That's just not in his game. We'll have to see how much that affects this offense, having to play in structure a little more, and see if they're still going to be able to be as explosive. Flipping it over to their defense, they have another high NFL draft prospect in Ruben Bain Jr. I've seen some people talking he's a late round one. I like what I see on him. I don't see why he wouldn't get into the first round unless he has a really bad season. He's a really good prospect. I'm not going to lie about it. I think their other edge, Mesidor, is also pretty good. He impressed me quite a few times. He's probably more of a day 2 guy, in my opinion, at best, but I don't see round 1 in him right now. They do have a lot of younger guys on this defense. It looks like guys who aren't draft eligible, or guys, would have to really break out to get into the NFL draft next year. But I do expect this defense to hopefully be better than it was last season for them. Their over under this year is 9.5. And maybe for me, being a little bit of a homer here, I'm going to go ahead and hit the under and say they go 9-3. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I just think they kind of have a tough schedule. They play Notre Dame. They play Florida. Florida State's going to try to give them all they can. I put it as a toss-up for that reason. Don't really think it will be. I think Louisville is going to be good. I've already said that. I think SMU is still going to be pretty good. I think Pittsburgh, if Eli Holstein is healthy, is going to be another team that surprises. I think they have a tough schedule, and that's why I'm going to go ahead and hit the under. I could be foolish and they go 10-2, but I don't feel like they're an 11-1 team right now. I do think they'd have to have a lot of things go right to get to that level. So I'm comfortable with 9-3, but there is a chance I'm wrong on this team. Now, moving on to the NC State Wolfpack. CJ Bailey's their starting quarterback. He's a true sophomore, big guy, 6'6, 210. Raw as all heck, though. Well, he's got to cut down on turnovers for next season. That was the biggest issue I had watching film. He looked like a freshman, and he's got to be able to step forward and leap forward a little bit and continue to grow, which is what honestly we all hope he can do. I mean, I think he could be a fantastic prospect down the road. He's got a little bit of that dual threat ability, and he has a lot of size, which is nice to see. I think their best offensive weapon right now, though, is Justin Jolly at tight end, and they have some other guys out there. I don't know a whole lot about Noah Rogers, Wesley Grimes, or Terrell Anderson as far as draft prospects go. Don't have real high grades on them, didn't grade them officially, so I can't talk super deep. I just watched the film to get a feel of the offense, get a feel of how they, run and game plan and how they do. So I didn't grade them, but they didn't look like high level guys to me. So I do think their offense could struggle for that reason. But I hope CJ Bailey takes a step forward. He is definitely kind of exciting, man. When he gets things going right, I should say. Sean Brown at linebacker could be interesting looking at defense. Devin Marshall could be another interesting player. They have a lot of transfers in here. Well, not a lot. They have a couple transfers in here. Trey Thomas from Temple to play linebacker. JJ Johnson from Georgia State. I don't see a ton of impact players on their defense right now. I think they have an okay defense. They're over under 6.5 this season. Not super exciting. I'm going to hit the under. I'm going to say they go 6-6 this year. I just am not the biggest fan of this team. I think they have a long way to go. I think CJ Bailey's going to have to take a big leap for me to be wrong here. And I do hope he does, but I just don't know that he's going to do that. So we're just going to have to be real about it. Now, this is a team that's probably the most fascinating team as we move on to the North Carolina Tar Heels. Dude, I don't know what to expect from Bill Belichick in college. I'm a Patriots fan. I'm rooting for this to work out phenomenally. Unless they play the Gators in the playoffs or something. But the fact is, I don't know how this is going to work out. I think Gio Lopez is a good quarterback to get, the transfer from South Alabama. He's young, he's developing, kind of a dual threat opportunity there, which is something Belichick never had in New England. So I don't know, though. Freddie Kitchens is his offensive coordinator. I'm just going to be real about it. I really don't know how I feel about this team. They do have some interesting players, though. They have Kobe Paysor at receiver, who I do know is kind of interesting. They got some transfers in. They got David Gauss at running back, who is kind of interesting. They got Jake Johnson, who's a decent tight end. They got some transfers across their offensive line. Austin Blask almost left. He decided to return to them. It's a lot of unknown here. Like I said, we just don't really know. Their defense is chock full of transfers, and that's something I expected. That's where Bill Belichick's specialty comes in. They also have his son, Stephen Belichick, running the defense, which is going to help. He already has some college experience. And I do think that one of the guys I didn't highlight with a picture because he's never played yet for him to watch for is cornerback Thaddeus Dixon from Washington. I just got word of him because I watch NFL SE and they talked about him. So I actually just started watching his film and I have one full tape done of his. And yeah, he's an impressive player to watch out for. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that he fits really well into what Stephen Belichick wants him to do, which in turn is exactly what Bill's going to want him to do. I think so. This defense is a lot of unknown. I'm just going to be real about it. I don't know what to expect. I trust Bill Belichick as long as he can transfer his schemes, which if Steven's able to communicate it to the kids in Washington who weren't bad last year, they were actually quite good. I don't see why he won't be able to do it here. So I do think their defense will probably play well, but that's a little bit of projecting based on their coach. There's a lot of transfers. You just don't know how it comes together, honestly. In the NFL, it always worked for Belichick most of the time. You just don't know. They got an over-under of 7.5. And as much as I want to be crazy aggressive because I am a fan of Belichick and I want to see this work out really well, I decided to still hit the over because I believe in Bill Belichick. And I think even though he's the greatest NFL coach of all time, he has a lot to prove in college. I just think he's too good not to improve this team. And I'm going to go 8-4 for their final record. And honestly, if it all works out, it could be higher than that. But at the same time, I could see a world where it's much lower than that because there's a steep learning curve coming to college football. So we really have to watch the first few weeks of the year and see how they look playing TCU, Charlotte, Richmond, UCF, and then Clemson's the big one. And then after that, I think we'll have a pretty firm grasp on how this team's going to probably be this season. Because I think TCU is a good middle ground contest. Charlotte and Richmond should be run up the scores, play well, show things off. UCF, I think they should be able to beat. I'm not a big fan of UCF this season. And Clemson, well, I expect them to be one of the best teams in the nation. So if they play well against Clemson and their defense is able to confuse Cade Klubnik, I'm going to sit here and go, you know what? Maybe North Carolina's better at 8-4. We'll have to see, though. This one's just, like I said, a whole lot of we don't know. Moving on now to the Pitt Panthers. Eli Holstein at quarterback. He played really well last year as a freshman redshirt. He got hurt. If he stays healthy, I think Pitt's going to be a better team. Kenny Johnson at receiver is an interesting player. They got Katarius Hicks at receiver from Louisville, Raphael Williams at receiver. Desmond Reed at running back was definitely an interesting watch. I thought he has some upside in his game. Some transfers across the offensive line, and Jeff Percy from Michigan and Keith Guvia from Richmond. But I think the big issue they're going to run into is their defense doesn't have a lot of top end talent, and they don't have a lot of older players, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just you don't know what to expect from underclassmen and guys who aren't draft eligible. So I don't really know how to project their defense, which is my one concern in thinking this team could be better than expected. I like Eli Holstein. So when I see their over-unders just 6.5, for me, if Eli Holstein's healthy, I think their over-under would have been higher this year because they would have had more wins last season. And I'm going to say Holstein stays healthy, continues to develop, and they go 7-5 this year. I almost went 8-4 with Pitt. I'm not going to lie to you. But I was looking at it and I'm like, man, I think I'm being just a touch too aggressive. I didn't give them an outright loss at all on their schedule. Even against Miami, a team who has a significant talent advantage over them, or Georgia Tech, who I think could be, or Notre Dame. Like, I didn't do L's here because of Eli Holstein. I genuinely think that if he steps forward and stays healthy, he could be a changing factor for this program. But I'm going to go 7-5, play it safe, say they hit the over because of him, but not get too aggressive and, hold that off maybe for another year. If he does really good this year, next year, I'm going to be over the top on this team. Now, last year, this team shocked everybody in the ACC. SMU with Kevin Jennings at quarterback were very good. They made it all the way to the college football playoff. Didn't go well against Penn State. They did not play good in the cold. I think Kevin Jennings is an interesting college quarterback. He has a long way to go to ever be considered anything for the NFL. Very up and down, in my opinion, passing the ball, but he's dynamic and he can make some plays. I think Jordan Hudson at receiver and Romello Brinson are both good players. They got Yamir Knight from JMU. Have not watched tape of him, not going to lie to you. Derek McFall coming in at running back, trying to replace Brashad Smith, who moved on to the NFL. RJ Maryland at tight end. A lot of, 3 of their 5 starters are draft eligible this year, or our seniors this year. So hopefully that means good things for the offensive line. Flipping it over to their defense, Isaiah Smith was interesting along with Isaiah Nuakobia at safety. I really liked him. He had some interesting plays on tape. Jeffrey Maba coming over from Purdue and Terry Webb coming over from Texas State are 2 transfers who are expected to start. I don't really know. This team's over-under's a little lower than I expected, but at the same time, I think it makes a lot of sense at 8-5 or at 8.5 victories. So I'm looking at their schedule, and for me, I think they have a lot of winnable games on here. Like I say Baylor could be more of a toss-up than a win, but I'm trusting the fact that SMU was good last year and Rhett Lashley was good, and Dave Aranda has been up and down at Baylor, and they've had some slow starts that have hurt him. So I do worry about this game being early in the season for them. But I think as far as the ACC goes, they have some tough games. They have Louisville, Miami, and Clemson on there, which are all 3 games that honestly, I'm kind of expecting them to lose. The problem is, outside of them 3 games, who are you going to look at and be like, that's a surefire loss? I don't see one on here. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, 9-3 just felt right. So we're going to go 9-3 with this team. I'm not super confident, but I look at it and I'm like, unless they really disappoint, I mean, maybe Baylor or TCU slips up, and gets them. I don't think Wake Forest, Stanford, Syracuse this year, I don't know what to expect from them. I like Fran Brown, the head coach, but let's be real. They lost Kyle McCord. They lost a lot of guys in the portal that were really good for them. I just don't know what to expect from them. So 9-3 felt right. Moving on to the Stanford Cardinal. This team's going to suck. Frank Reich at head coach following everything that happened this spring with their former head coach. They are starting Ben Gulbranson at quarterback, the Oregon State transfer, who's really not been good at all in college. I'm not going to lie to you. They got a bunch of transfers. They lost a lot of good players from this team. I honestly think this might be one of the worst Power 4 teams in the country. I'm not going to lie to you. We're not going to spend a ton of time on them. Looking at their defense, I didn't see a whole lot to get excited about there. Mitch Lieberger had some plays. He was a former running back for him. I thought that was pretty interesting. I forget what game game, but Zach Bucky had a good game in it, so I put him down as somebody to watch out for. But everybody else left. Bailey went to um, Texas Tech. Yeah, I just somebody else too was really good that left. I don't know. They're over under 3.5 for a reason. Don't think it's a good year for to be a Stanford fan, and I don't think it's going to be a fun year. I think they have maybe a win over Hawaii and San Jose State. I even question those sometimes. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think Gulbranson's a good quarterback, and I really could see one of those two teams even beating them. 2-10 is my final record prediction, and I'm afraid it could even be worse than that. I was considering going 1-11 just to have one team that really bottomed out bad. I do think 2-10 is the worst prediction I've had for one of the Power Four teams. So 1-11 felt maybe a little too aggressive, but this team is just not good. There's no other way around it. Moving on to the Syracuse Orange. They officially announced Stephen Gili as their starting quarterback this season. I really liked what he did at Notre Dame in the playoffs. He replaced Riley Leonard on that drive right before halftime. He went like 6 of 7. He was super efficient. He looked good in mop-up duty when he played last year. So I'm really excited to see what he's going to do as a starter. I'm surprised Notre Dame quickly decided to do, they wanted CJ Carr to take over the 4-star. And ultimately, he did end up becoming the starter like expected. But I was just kind of surprised they let Angeli get out of the building that early. He must have had a feeling they just wanted Carr to start because, I don't know. I feel like the kid kind of earned it for what he did for him. Ricky Collins, a transfer from LSU, is also there at quarterback. I guess it was really close, actually, I should say. Not pretty close. It was really close between him and Angeli on who ended up starting. So there's a chance you could see him play this season. I think at receiver, Jonte Cook is a really good prospect. He was a high recruit, but he has some issues. He was kind of a headache at Texas. He went to Washington, and something happened there to where he was basically kicked off the team immediately. So you got to question what's going to happen with him. I don't know if he's ever going to develop, but the kid has a lot of potential to hopefully maybe reach and get there, and he could be a very talented player for you. Losing Trebor Pena is a big loss for this team. I'm not even going to lie to you. Taking a look at their defense, Deuce Chestnut was a good player for him, man. He stuck out to me on film. I also think Nickelback Devin Grant stood out as well. I cannot lie to you. He had a couple good plays that I watched. I think I watched his pick. I don't remember who it was against, but it impressed me. I thought it was a good play. I think they got some transfers. David Reese was another guy who left Cal. He's a former Florida Gator, edge rusher. I know a lot about him. I thought he was going to be better than he's been, but that's probably my Gator bias coming through. So hopefully he can break out for Syracuse. Fun fact, also root for the Orange a little bit. I've moved around in my life from Massachusetts, graduated high school in upstate New York. And I don't mean like Poughkeepsie. I mean like north of Syracuse, upstate New York, where everybody is an Orange fan. So they have a soft spot in my heart. They were never good, even though they're a rival of Boston College. I never really cared about them. So I always kind of rooted for them to figure it out because they were pretty bad most of the time. And I still hope they can do it. And I think they have the right head coach. I just don't know that it's going to be their year this year. Their over-under's 5.5. And I don't think they have necessarily an easy schedule. Let's just be honest. Tennessee, I actually, don't feel good about that game. I think that could be an L. Or I don't know. Tennessee has a lot of talent, but you don't know what happened at quarterback. So I don't know exactly how to feel about that game. Toss up against UConn. They got Colgate, but then they play Clemson. They play Duke. They play SMU. They play Pittsburgh. They play Georgia Tech. They play North Carolina. They play Miami. They play Notre Dame. That's a gauntlet, man. So I think 5-7's reasonable, if not maybe a little bit aggressive, because it's a tough schedule, man. But I think they're a good team, and Fran Brown's a good coach. It's going to be disappointing to go back to 5-7, but I think their future's still really good here. Now, looking at Virginia Tech, I thought Kyron Jones was going to take a step forward last year, and he did anything but that. He has a lot of talent. He just hasn't really been able to put it together. I'm not going to lie to you. I think Donovan Green at Wake Forest was good last year on film, so hopefully he can make an impact for him. Aiden Green at receiver. Terry and Stewart at running back, who came over from Bowling Green, somebody who could be interesting. Thomas Rimick on the interior. I think he plays tackle, but I expect him to play on the interior in the NFL. He's an interesting prospect. He's probably the best prospect on this team that I've seen. I'm not going to lie to you. He could be good. Problem is, it's one offensive lineman, and I'm not the biggest fan of the rest of this team. Caleb Woodson at linebacker is all right. Dante Lovett popped, which is why I put him in there. They got a transfer from Texas State and Eastern Michigan to hopefully be able to step up. They're over under 6.5 this season. So I know it sounded like I was kind of negative on them, but I don't know. I really thought they'd be further ahead than they are right now, and I'm very disappointed with Kyron Drones. I hope he develops and takes a step forward this year because I really do like him, and I really thought he was going to be more than this last season. I didn't get to put out previews last year, but he was somebody that if I would have, I'd have been overly aggressive about. I thought there was a chance the kid was going to develop, and he just hasn't the way I hoped he would. So maybe he will this year, and it makes my under prediction wrong where I have him going 6-6 this year. But I almost went lower than that with them. I almost gave them 5 wins, but I decided to go 6-6 because maybe there's a world where Drones gets some of it figured out. Now we're going to move on to their rival, the Virginia Cavaliers. They brought in Chandler Morris from North Texas. Good quarterback, has a bit of a turnover issue, is one of the things I'll say about him. Not the biggest guy, not really an NFL prospect. He's the undrafted type that might get a chance in training camp. He just doesn't have the size, too light, too short, but he throws a lot. And yeah, he did all right in college for North Texas last year. He had 31 passing touchdowns. You got to give him credit for that. They got Trell Harris at receiver, Cameron Courtney, Jamal Edrine from Purdue, Xavier Brown, somebody that I like at running back, Dakota Twitty, not a bad player. I think they actually have a very veteran offensive line, which is a good thing to have. And that's going to give them hope to be able to protect Morris and, maybe have a better season. On defense, Antonio Clary was good. And Cam Robinson at middle linebacker, I like. Mitchell Melton came from Ohio State, hasn't played much. We'll have to see how that works out. Kazim Moore coming over from Elon is taking a step up. They also have Donovan Platt coming over from Army, stepping up competition. Keenan Johnson coming over from Utah, and Devin Neal from Louisville. This team has a lot of transfers on defense. They do have some players I like, though. And I think this is a year where they need to start taking a step forward. 6.5 is their over-under for this season, and I feel kind of good about this team. And I'm going to go ahead and say they go 7-5 this year. It's a bit aggressive, but I went under on a lot of teams in the ACC because I'm not sure how they're going to do out of conference. And I really don't know how to feel about this conference as a whole. I feel like there's some top heavy teams. So I feel like there could be a lot of losses for teams because the grouping at the top, I feel pretty good about. So I decided to go over here in Virginia and 7-5 because somebody has to. And I think they at least have a good quarterback and they have some good skill position players. Now, on to our final team in the conference. And again, it's another team I think is not going to be very good. They just got a new head coach. He came over from Washington State. He did really good there. And Jake Dicker, hopefully he can get it together. I just don't feel good about him with their quarterback and Robbie Ashford. He's not a good college quarterback even. You watched him play at South Carolina last year when Lenore Sellers got hurt, and that offense ground to a halt and sucked. I know he's not playing in the SEC, but let's face it, man. He's still playing pretty good defenses here in the ACC. It may not be SEC level, but you know what? These guys deserve credit, and I just don't think he's going to be able to break out against them. So I do really feel like he's going to hold this offense back quite a bit. They have a ton of transfers who came in. They brought in multiple offensive linemen from Washington State, and we'll just have to see what happens. I really don't know what to make of the offense. The defense had a little bit more guys returning, but not a whole lot of guys to get excited about. I think they lost most of their better players to the portal. And I don't know if the guys they replaced them are going to be as good. So I do expect this to be kind of a disappointing season for Wake Forest. Their over-under this year is just 4.5 victories, and I think they're going to hit the under, and it's not going to be in a good first year of the Jake Dickert experiment here, but I do think he's a good coach. He was able to build Washington State despite all the issues going on there when he took over. I think Dave Clawson was a good coach at Wake Forest. Their offense is going to be totally different now, though. So it's going to be a process for the players that did return to learn how to play outside of that slow mesh system. So we'll have to see how it all works out for Wake Forest. I think it's going to be a tough year one, and unfortunately, fans aren't going to like that. But that's it. We're finally through all of our college football previews. It's a lot of work doing these. So if you stuck around and you liked it, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, give me a comment and tell me why. Tell me where I'm wrong, because ultimately, these are just my predictions. They're my gut feeling off of watching film and off of studying and doing a ton of research. I by no means expect these to be perfect, and I fully expect to make myself look stupid by talking about how great a team is that I have a bad record on in one of these videos across this Power 4. It's going to happen. There's also a team I think that's going to be great, that's going to be terrible. Florida State last year, didn't expect them to be as bad as they were. Thankfully, I didn't have a video out because as a Gator fan, I would have hated myself for giving them a ton of praise and singing them praise just to see them crash and burn. I would have been mad that I didn't see it coming. And I fully expect that to happen to another team this year. So, hey, hit me up in the comments. Tell me which team you think is going to shock the most out of the ACC. That's what I really want. I love discussions. Let's talk about it. Like I said, I'm a football nerd. I'm a junkie. I enjoy it. I love talking about it. And it's what I like to do in my free time. So if you had time to watch this and you enjoyed it, hit me up. Let's talk about it, man. I want to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Have a great day. I'll catch you in the next one, which will probably be the NFL season preview, or we'll talk about week 0 here coming up for college football. But that's it for me today. I'll talk to you later. I'm out.